Okay, a few years back, there was a news story about strawberries that managed to send the tech world into a tizzy. The story went something like this. A 28-year-old student from Japan comes to New York City and lands $50 million to sell his designer Japanese strawberries to rich New Yorkers for $50 a box. That's $50 for 6 strawberries. The response was not entirely surprising. Some laughs, some eye rolls. It was yet another case of out-of-touch venture capital gone crazy. Or was it? Well, fast forward 2 years, and many of the startup's fiercest critics and competitors are going out of business. But the $50 strawberries, they're more popular and profitable than ever. So why did a handful of investors throw $15 million at a guy growing overpriced strawberries on a vertical farm in New Jersey? What did they see that others missed? Well, the answer might just make Oishii and its visionary founder, Hiroki Koga, the stuff of legends. Could this $50 million startup, one many are calling the Tesla of strawberries, end up saving an industry and revolutionizing agriculture in the process? Or is vertical farming just a utopian dream? Why are big players like Walmart, Amazon, and SoftBank pumping billions into vertical farming? And is this a telltale sign of another Silicon Valley bubble ready to burst? Let's find out. There's a really good strawberry.
There's a vertical farm in Jersey City that's revolutionizing how strawberries are grown, but also how they taste.
This is something that really makes us different from our other vertical farms. It's the sweetest strawberry, it's the freshest strawberry, it's the cleanest strawberry.
Okay, so for years, from New York to Tokyo, Iceland to Argentina, farming has been going urban and vertical. The concept of a vertical farm was actually first proposed in 1999 by this fella, a professor of environmental health at Columbia University. He challenged his students to design a productive rooftop farm made for the city, and now 23 years on, his thought experiment has blossomed into an industry worth billions. Between 2014 and 2020, investors have pumped more than $1.8 billion into vertical farm startups across the globe, and projections estimate the market to be worth $20.9 billion in the next 5 years. Why is so much money coming from tech investors in Silicon Valley? Well, talk to any traditional farmer and they'll tell you, farming is a difficult and unpredictable business. A farmer's output has always been at the mercy of the gods. They face droughts, floods, storms, disease, and unfavorable weather conditions, not to mention a diminishing supply of usable land and increasingly high transportation costs. On the other hand, indoor and vertical farms, which are a form of controlled environmental agriculture, or CEA, can grow crops 365 days a year, unaffected by the seasons and protected from extreme weather events that can destroy a harvest in one fell swoop. The tiny nation of the Netherlands is a case in point for this tech. Since the 1970s, their innovations have transformed the tiny, soggy, below sea level country into the world's second largest agricultural exporter. They're shipping $10.7 billion worth of tomatoes, cucumbers, and bell peppers annually. How did they do it? Their process actually inspired Oishii's setup with a few key differences we'll show you in a moment. Through elaborate water filtration and recycling systems, these farms use between 70 and 95% less water than traditional farms. And by controlling every step of the fertilization process, they can eliminate bacteria like E. coli that destroy crops and endanger consumers. Vertical farmers like Hiroki Koga have learned from Dutch successes in greenhouse environments while layering in new technologies like robotics, computer vision, and artificial intelligence to improve light, temperature, humidity, and other factors to optimize growth. Because these indoor and vertical farms can be built right in urban centers, the argument goes they don't have to burn fossil fuels shipping their product thousands of miles. Produce can go from farm to table in minutes. All of this sounds great, right? Vertical farming is more environmentally friendly, more efficient, has higher yields, runs year-round. What's not to love? Well, as it turns out, the weather isn't the only source of uncertainty in the farming game. In just the last 2 years, vertical farming might have finally found its fatal flaw: energy. Despite pitches to investors that vertical farming is the sexier, cheaper, and greener way to grow food, There's no way around it. These farms need a ton of energy. About 8.2% of total Dutch energy consumption goes to powering indoor farms with natural gas heating and artificial light. These farms consume vast amounts of electricity to power LED lights, along with all of the advanced tech that's supposed to bring cost-saving efficiencies. What made indoor vertical farming a reality in recent years was the significant drop in the price of LEDs, which plummeted an unbelievable 94% between 2008 and 2015. But the drop in prices might not be substantial enough. A 2021 global CEA census report found that vertical farms use over 100 times as much energy as outdoor lettuce growers in Arizona. And with COVID-19 affecting supply chains and the war in Ukraine driving up energy costs, some of the biggest players in the vertical farming space, including some of those who were laughing at Oishii's $50 strawberries, are now gasping for air. Agricool, a French company growing greens in recycled shipping containers, went into receivership in January last year. AppHarvest is being sued by investors for inflating expectations, and InFarm, a company based in Berlin, is laying off more than half of its workforce. The list goes on. Fifth season AeroFarms, Calera, some of the most heavily funded and tech-savvy startups in the vertical farming space, are either downsizing or selling their high-tech operations for spare parts. So is vertical farming dying a slow, painful death? Is this genius idea with promises to save the environment and upend traditional agriculture just another big Silicon Valley bubble? Will the $50 million strawberry startup be the next domino to fall? Well, to get to the bottom of that question, we need to look closely at our protagonist, Hiroki Koga, and his startup, Oishii. To understand why Oishii is thriving and growing, we need to take a quick trip to Koga's home turf, Japan. We didn't get those tickets. In the meantime, for the Japanese, produce occupies an extremely elevated status. Where Westerners tend to gift each other expensive wines, scotch, whiskey, in Japan, it's expensive designer fruit. For generations, the Japanese have made the cultivation of delicious fruit an art, a science, and a business. In 2019, a pair of Yubari melons sold at auction for $70,000, and a varietal of strawberries called Bijinhime typically go for $448 a pop. During Koga's brief time in the US, he saw a very different market than what he was used to. Most American growers were geared towards mass production and withstanding long-distance transport rather than maximizing flavor. Rare Japanese strawberries, like the ones he cherished as a child, were too difficult to transport from Japan, and Koga knew that vertical farming, with its precision engineering, might be the answer. So, having previously worked on indoor vertical farming technology as a consultant in Japan, they built a 1,000 square foot indoor vertical farm that provided strategic access to New York City's 70-plus Michelin-starred restaurants. After all, who else would buy their $8 omakase berry? Simulating ideal conditions to grow this rare Japanese mountain strawberry on a vertical farm halfway around the world meant using variations on all of that established vertical farm tech. The real challenge, according to Koga, was the bees. Bees have a hard time with artificial light, which is why most vertical farms use expensive mechanical pollination. Koga knew that solving pollination with bees was the fastest route to replicating high-end berries and bringing down costs, and he succeeded. Taking a page from Tesla, Koga knew that engineering a high-end luxury product like Tesla's first Roadster could give them the runway he needed to innovate, scale, and bring down the cost of production while turning a profit. Oishii's strawberries originally hit stores at a cool $8 per strawberry. But after 6 years of refining his methods, they're down to $2.50 a piece. So what did Koga understand that others didn't? Vertical farming is a tech sector, and tech breakthroughs are particularly susceptible to something called the hype cycle. The Gartner hype cycle claims to chart the maturity of emerging technologies through 5 phases. It starts with a technological breakthrough, like Despommiers' first prototype of a vertical climate-controlled farm. These early proof-of-concept stories garner publicity, but the commercial viability remains unproven. In the second stage, a new breakthrough leads to inflated expectations and a wave of investment. The early successes of vertical farming came with the drop in LED prices and the relatively low cost of energy. Publicity plays up the success stories, leading to more FOMO and more investment. Then come the failures. The majority of projects who jumped on the investment bandwagon finally fall like dominoes, and this eventually leads to the dreaded trough of disillusionment. The recent spate of bankruptcies and downsizing suggests that vertical farming is moving into its trough of disillusionment phase. And Koga says he saw this coming. Quote, "In the early 2000s, Japan had a few hundred vertical farms across the country, probably more than the number of vertical farms that exist today in the US. Almost all of them closed. People thought it was a fascinating technology, but the economics just didn't make sense yet." End quote. So why have investors spent billions over the past 10 years? And why was Silicon Valley so keen to get into the game? Part of this has to do with how vertical farm startups pitch to Silicon Valley investors. Quote, "There are many reasons why, but mainly it's that they know investors won't invest in a farm, but they'll invest in a tech company." End quote. That's what Henry Gordon Smith says, the founder of Agritecture, a CEA and vertical farming consulting firm. Quote, "Almost every company makes the argument that it's found a unique tech solution to lower cost. Custom robotic systems can plant seeds, move trays of plants, and harvest crops. But when companies each build their own technology, expenses balloon. Most vertical farms in the US are a long way from profitability. Based on an analysis we did, we don't actually see a scenario where in the next 10 years, vertical farming will compete with field grown at scale in North America." End quote. This is why Oishii has gone the path of Tesla, focusing on high-end luxury products before moving to mass-market greens, where the numbers just don't add up. It's a strategy that has paid off handsomely. Eventually, the unit economics will make sense, and those who pursued a viable pathway into the market will survive and thrive. Right now, however, we will see a winnowing of hundreds of companies down to a few successful players, and then the slow climb up to the slope of enlightenment, up to an eventual plateau of productivity and profitability. Hiroki Koga's strategy of pursuing unique, high-end produce was a brilliant move. He saw the growing hype around the industry in Europe and the United States, and he capitalized on it. So, what's the moral of the story here? And what does this mean for the future of vertical farming? Well, according to Henry Gordon Smith, the current spate of failures might be a truly positive development for the industry. Vertical farming is still in its infancy, and it must now move from overly optimistic utopianism to find pragmatic solutions to difficult problems. Energy prices are high for the time being, but this is pushing vertical farms to transition to truly renewable energy sources, or to move closer to cheap, abundant energy in new urban centers in the Middle East. Most of all, according to Gordon Smith, the industry is growing up, moving beyond the inflated promises of exponential growth and toward a recognition of the superior value proposition of CEA products, as Koga has shown us with his delicious omakase strawberry. So, what are the lessons on the business front? Well, contrary to the early ridicule of his overpriced strawberries, Hiroki Koga is having the last laugh. He knew how to surf the wave of investor and public sentiment, how to get in at the right time with a winning strategy and a solid plan for future growth. Oishii's delicious designer strawberries are giving the industry and investors proof that a well-timed strategy and tempered expectations can find a pathway to success for vertical farming. If vertical farming's promise of greener, cheaper, and more efficient farming ever comes to fruition, it will be thanks to the successes and the failures of so many entrepreneurs, technologists, and investors who took the risk to make a big dream a reality. You got these from Fresh Time? Mm-hmm. Oh my God.